History books often focus on the grand castles, wealthy kings, and legendary battles of the past. But beneath the surface of civilized society lies a much darker reality. When ancient laws were broken, justice was rarely swift, and it was almost never painless. From terrifying torture devices to elaborate methods of slow execution, ancient societies engineered ways to punish criminals that seemed like straight out of a nightmare. These punishments weren't just about ending a life, they were designed to send a chilling message to anyone watching. What was meant to keep the peace often resulted in historical horrors that still make experts shudder today. Today on the Insane Top 10 Vault, we're uncovering the top 10 ancient punishments too brutal to imagine. Some of these methods show the dark creativity of the human mind, while others will make you glad to be living in the modern world. Let's unlock the vault. Number 10. The breaking wheel in medieval Europe. During the Middle Ages, one of the most feared sights in the public square was a massive wooden wagon wheel. Criminals convicted of terrible crimes were tied to the spokes of this wheel. An executioner would then use a heavy iron bar to systematically smash their bones through the gaps. Once the victim's limbs were completely shattered, their body was woven through the spokes, and the wheel was hoisted up on a tall pole for the birds. Imagine the sheer terror of hearing the iron bar approach. How long could someone endure that kind of public agony before losing consciousness? Number 9. Crushing by elephants in ancient Asia. In ancient India and Southeast Asia, rulers didn't just use executioners, they used trained elephants. Known as Gaja Mendas, these massive beasts were specially taught to execute prisoners in the most terrifying way possible. The elephant wouldn't just step on the victim right away. Instead, they were trained to drag out the process, stepping on limbs first, rolling the person around, or even using blades attached to their tusks. The handler had complete control over whether the death was quick or dragged out over hours. It is bizarre and terrifying to think of a majestic animal being used as a deadly weapon of the law. Number 8. Poena, Cullei, the punishment of the sack in ancient Rome. Ancient Romans had a very specific and highly disturbing punishment for anyone who murdered a parent. It was called Poena, Cullei. First, the criminal was severely beaten, then they were sewn tightly into a large leather sack. But they weren't alone there. The guards would throw in a live dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster. The sack was then tossed into the deep waters of the Tiber River. What do you think was worse? The terror of drowning, or being trapped in the dark with panicked, biting animals fighting for their lives? Number 7. Lingchi, death by 1,000 cuts, in China. Used for nearly 1,000 years until it was finally banned in the early 1900s, Lingchi was reserved for the absolute worst offenses, like treason. The victim was tied to a wooden post in a public market. Over the course of hours, or sometimes even days, an executioner would expertly use a sharp knife to remove small pieces of the victim's flesh. The goal was to keep the person alive as long as possible to maximize the suffering. It is chilling to think that a punishment requiring such precise, calculated cruelty was entirely legal. Number 6. The blood eagle of the Vikings. While scholars still debate whether this was a true practice or just a dark legend meant to terrify enemies, the blood eagle remains the most infamous Viking punishment. It was reserved for the most hated foes. The victim's back would be sliced open, and their ribs were chopped away from the spine. The ribs were then pulled outward to look like a pair of wings. Finally, the lungs were pulled out and draped over the wings. Even if it was just a story meant to scare rival clans, the mere concept of the blood eagle proves how brutal the Viking Age really was. Number 5. Keelhauling in the 17th century navies. Life at sea was harsh, but crossing a captain in the Dutch or British Navy could lead to keelhauling. A heavy rope was tied under the arms of a sailor, who was then thrown overboard. The crew would pull the rope from the other side, dragging the victim entirely under the ship's hull. The bottom of the ship was completely covered in razor-sharp barnacles. The victim was not only drowning in the dark ocean, but also being flayed alive by the hull. Most did not survive the crossing. Would you ever step foot on a ship knowing that was the penalty for disobedience? Number 4. Impalement in ancient Assyria and Romania. Long before Vlad the Impaler made it famous in the 1400s, The ancient Assyrians used impalement to terrorize their enemies. A thick, sharpened wooden stake was driven through the victim's body. The terrifying genius of this punishment was that the executioners knew exactly how to angle the stake to miss vital organs. This meant the victim wouldn't die immediately. They would slide down the pole under their own weight, agonizingly surviving for several days. Can you even comprehend the psychological horror of seeing a whole forest of these stakes placed outside a city wall? Number 3, flaying alive by the ancient Assyrians. The ancient Assyrian Empire was infamous for its cruelty, and flaying was their ultimate weapon of fear. Usually reserved for rebel leaders or defeated kings, the victim was tied down while executioners used small, sharp knives to peel their skin off while they were still completely conscious. The process started at the legs or face. The removed skin wasn't thrown away. It was proudly hung on the city walls or draped over pillars as a gruesome warning to anyone else thinking of rebelling. It feels like stepping back into a world completely devoid of mercy. Number 2, the Brazen Bull of ancient Greece. Invented by a man named Persia in ancient Greece, the Brazen Bull was a hollow statue made entirely of brass, complete with a door on the side. The condemned was locked inside, and a roaring fire was lit underneath the belly of the beast. As the metal heated up, the person inside was slowly roasted alive. The most twisted part? The bull's head had a complex system of pipes inside so that the screams of the dying victim sounded like the angry bellowing of a real bull. In a twist of fate, the cruel ruler who commissioned it was so disgusted that he forced the inventor, Persia, to be its very first victim. Number 1, Scaphism, the boats, in ancient Persia. Taking the number 1 spot for pure, agonizing terror is Scaphism, also known as the boats. The victim was stripped naked and trapped tightly between 2 hollowed-out rowboats, with their head, hands, and feet sticking out. They were forcefully fed massive amounts of milk and honey to cause severe diarrhea. Then, their exposed skin was completely smeared with more honey to attract insects. Left floating in a stagnant pond under the blazing sun, the victim was slowly eaten alive by biting bugs and parasites over the course of weeks. This punishment tops the list because it weaponized nature itself to create unimaginable, prolonged suffering. And those were the top 10 ancient punishments too brutal to imagine. It's incredible and truly chilling to look back and see the extreme lengths humanity has gone to in the name of justice and revenge throughout history. Who knows what other dark secrets are still hidden within the pages of our past? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the Insane Top 10 Vault for more unbelievable discoveries, mysteries, and stories from around the world. And tell me in the comments, which ancient punishment shocked you the most? Until the next vault opens, stay curious.